I'm Maureen Mahood, broker owner of Sell Your Home Charlotte here in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina. And I am here with Josh Lipack from Grabowski Law. And we're starting a series here called Ask the Lawyer. So Josh and I are going to do a few videos on things that buyers or sellers should know when they're buying and selling a house. And Josh is a Charlotte real estate attorney, and he's very good at his job. So I'm super happy that he could join me on this little journey. So Josh, today you and I we're going to talk about surveys because, you know, I represent a lot of buyers over the last few years, and you know, during COVID, everything was so crazy that a lot of people skip the survey, and then still sometimes people skip a survey, but I know how important it is. So why don't you start by telling us what is a survey, why do people need it, and also you could start and tell people a little bit about yourself as well.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. And as you mentioned, I'm a local real estate attorney with Grabowski Law. I've been doing this for 8 years now, and we've run into many issues, and surveys are often one of them. So I'm glad we're able to talk about this subject today. And like you, we always recommend that buyers get surveys. I mean, there might be some situations where you don't need to, a condo, maybe it's a new construction and the builder's just done one for you. But generally speaking, yes, we do always recommend them. And in some cases, we would definitely recommend them. For example, if it's a tear down or a vacant lot and you want to build a new home or you want to add to the footprint, you're going to want to make sure that your vision complies not just with the lot lines, but any kind of restrictions that a survey would reveal before you commit to that property if it's not going to work with what you want to do.
Okay. What kind of restrictions could a survey uncover?
So other than the obvious lot lines, because that's what a survey really is. You're mapping out where the lot actually is, but there are additional restrictions that it'll reveal. Commonly, you'll see setbacks. These are city enforced zoning restrictions where you can't build within a certain amount of space from the lot line. So maybe it's 5 feet on the sides and 20 feet in the front. And those are important to note because, you know, if you want to build a detached garage or you want to or there already is a detached garage and maybe it's in violation, these are things you're definitely going to want to know.
Gotcha. And then, so you said it's the lot line, so you'll know exactly what your property lines are. And let's say most people are buying existing houses. They're, you know, building from the ground up and buying land is becoming few and far between, at least for me and my clients. So when you're buying an existing house, like for example, I have one that my clients are trying to get under contract right now. We're in negotiation, and it has actually a shared driveway on it. It's been disclosed because the house was built in 1989, but if no one ever disclosed that, we would know without a survey, right?
It depends. Some properties, it's probably more apparent than others from just visual inspection when you go and look at the property. But you're right. Otherwise, you may not know exactly what the shared driveway situation is or what area it covers. Also, you'll want to make sure that there's a shared driveway agreement in place where you both have equal use to that.
Okay.
And if not, you'll want to put one in.
Okay, so that's a good question. So how do you know if there's a shared driveway agreement? Is it recorded?
That would come up during the title search as a recorded document.
Gotcha. Okay, so why don't you share a horror story for us? Do you have one?
Yeah, I recently had a deal over the summer that fell apart because the property had an additional restriction called an impervious building area restriction, meaning that the footprint of the permanent structures on the property couldn't exceed a certain square footage. And in this case, it did because they'd added a detached 3-car garage and there was more square footage on the property than what was allowed. And the seller didn't want to cure the issue, and ultimately the deal fell apart. And it's important to know when these issues exist because even though they could exist without any real issue arising for 100 years, you never know if the city might become aware of that violation and then enforce that, or if a neighbor who's affected by the violation gets a survey and then has the city enforce it, you would have to correct it. And if that means tearing down a 3-car garage, it means tearing down a 3-car garage.
Wow. Nobody wants that to happen.
No, I would think not.
Okay, and then anything else on surveys? I know like we get them and then we send them to you and you look at them, and what exactly are you looking for when you get that piece of paper?
Just to make sure that everything's compliant, and then if it's not, to make sure that the buyer is fully aware of what the situation is so that they can decide whether they want to move forward accepting the risk of taking on that violation, or go back to the seller and say, hey, there's this violation, and whatever, if you can put a dollar amount to what taking on that risk is worth to you, maybe getting a seller concession or dropping the purchase price a little bit. However, I would say 9 times out of 10 or more, if there is an issue, it's most likely going to be a minor encroachment issue involving a fence or a driveway, where a portion is just maybe a few inches over the lot line, intruding on the neighbor's lot. So not a major issue.
Yeah, on that you probably wouldn't do anything. You would just be aware of it and move on, or?
I mean, every situation's different. If it's, maybe a really expensive, nice brick fence, and you're worried that a future neighbor could have you tear it down at your expense, maybe that's something that you want to consider. And a lot of times, if it's before closing, you can have a easement for encroachment drafted up if the neighbor is willing to basically acknowledge that that encroachment exists. Let's say it's just an inch over the property line. The neighbor could sign off on a document that's then recorded saying that they're aware of it, that they're allowing it to continue to be there.
Okay, so that's basically fixing it, so for future, because that'll run with the property forever.
Correct. Even if that owner who signed off on it moves and someone else moves in, that agreement is still enforceable with that property.
Perfect. Awesome. Anything else you can think about that people need to know about surveys?
I mean, ultimately, these are going to run you on a typical residential lot, maybe $500 to $700. So it's something to consider in your budget with closing costs, but it's a one-time fee that you're going to pay at closing. So if you're buying $1 million house, it's probably worth it, especially if you want to, if you want to do anything with your yard, if you want to add a fence because there's not one there, if you want to do a pool, extend the driveway, you want to make sure that it's compliant. And honestly, to get the permits for some of these things, you're going to have to know.
The other question I have, what if the seller is producing a survey that they did? Can we use that? Or like if there was a survey done, or the plat map, or like any of those things, could you use that in those circumstances? You have to do your own?
Yes and no. You can use an old survey, or you can rely on an old survey, I'll say. But depending on the age of it, things may have changed. Like someone may have a survey from when they bought the house 20 years ago. It's unlikely that anything's changed as far as the lot line goes. But if they had built a fence 10 years later, you don't really know. I mean, unless you bring a professional out there to double check, you don't really know for sure that there's an issue there.
Perfect. Okay. So that's everything everybody wanted to know about surveys, probably a little bit more. I guess the rule of thumb is you should probably get one if you're purchasing a house. So to order a survey, you would order it through your real estate agent or your attorney, whoever the attorney is. Do you guys order them? Or I know some attorneys don't anymore.
We can. Yeah, we do if people ask us.
Okay. And, they're usually probably out a couple weeks. So do you have to do it in due diligence, or is it a title issue if something comes up?
So for smaller issues, and it's always best to order this as soon as you go under contract, because like you said, they're about 2 weeks out. I mean, during COVID, it could have been months out. But
yeah, months. It was.
It's beneficial to get this done during due diligence, because if it's a minor issue, you're still kind of in that window where you can negotiate and you have a little bit more leeway. Major issues, it doesn't really matter if it's outside of due diligence. I mean, if the house itself is encroaching on the neighbor's lot, that's a pretty serious issue that wasn't disclosed.
And there's remedies to that, right? Like a variance or something like that. It's not like if it happens, you have to tear the house down. So that would seem unreasonable, or is it?
That would be a case-by-case issue on how egregious it is and what the city would determine.
Okay. So the city decides, not the neighbor, if it's a house encroaching, or would the neighbor?
Well, the city, if it's an encroachment, the neighbor could enforce it. And if it's setback violations, if it's easement violations, enforce it.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Joshua Lipack, Grabowski Law. It's like a mouthful, all of that together.
Very Polish.
Yeah, he is an excellent real estate attorney here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and his office is on Park Road. Josh is going to send me all his contact information, so we'll always have it below our, on YouTube, below everything. So if you want to reach out to him and ask him some questions or follow up, you can do that. And I'm Maureen Mahood, broker owner of Sell Your Home Charlotte. And if you like the content that you see here, please like and subscribe. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks. Bye.